Hello students, welcome to KENE'S Educare. Today in the session of class 6th history, we'll do the part 2 of chapter from hunting gathering to growing food. In the first part earlier, we learnt about why people moved from one place to another, how do we know about these people, important tools, and how did they choose to live in a place, what were the important sites, and how did people find out about the fire. There were traces of ash, correct, in some region of Kurnool caves. Then we study different ages in the prehistoric times: Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. And in the Stone Age, we read about three distinguished categories: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic. Then, how the environment gradually changed and how farming and herding began. Just for a quick review, this was the Kurnool caves where the traces of ash were found, and these are the three different ages in the prehistoric time: the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. And this is the distinguished categories of the Stone Age: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic. Now, in this part, we will learn about a new way of life, storing animals. We will find about the farmers and the herders also. Their culture flourished. The practice of farming and herding expanded. Then how did they move to a more settled life? How things changed gradually. They basically changed their lifestyle and their houses and their way of life, way of earning, way of fooding. And then we'll have a closer look to a Neolithic site also. So let's begin. First is the new way of life. Okay, you know that in the Neolithic period, when new ideas emerged, new ideas regarding the agriculture, regarding the cultivation emerged, and they expanded. So basically, they started growing food, they started growing grains, and now they knew then when the grains will get ripened, correct? So since they know about growing plants, they had to stay in the same place for a long time so that they can look after the plants, correct? They have to water the plant, they have to weed it, remove the weeds, they have to drive away the animals and birds till the grain ripened. That is why they had to stay at one place, correct? So first problem is solved, that in the new way of life, people started settling down in one place because now they were practicing agriculture. And to practice agriculture, to lay crops, you have to stay at one place so that you can look after the plants, correct? Second point, second change in the way of life was, now grain were there, grain ripened. Now you have to store those grains also. For that, people started making all these large containers. Okay. People started thinking about storing the grains. When the grains get ripened, they started storing it. They started thinking about storing it. And to store it, they began making large clay pots, wove baskets, or duck pits. This is a clay pot, as you can see. This is a woven basket by a material, and this is a duck pit. Okay, the pit which they used to dig so that they can store their food. Their ripened grain can be stored in such things or places. Second topic of this chapter is that they started storing animals also. Now, how will they store animals? You can't keep an animal in a cage. It's not about keeping an animal in a cage. It's about using the food coming out of the animal. For example, you know that animals multiply naturally, correct? They multiply, they reproduce, and they give birth to their offsprings, or they lay eggs. So basically, animals multiply naturally. Various animals provide milk, provide some source of food. Some animals also provide meat because we can eat them. For example, chicken, they provide us meat. Fish, we eat fish also. So animals were a kind of source of food for the people in the prehistoric time. And in the today's world also, animals are a source of food. That is why animals were reared so that they can be used as a source of food or as a store of food. Okay. Now, important question is, apart from food, what are the other things that could have been obtained from animals? Apart from food, animals से आप और कैसी help ले सकते हो? What are animals used for today? The answer to this is, apart from food, animals also give us skin for making clothes. They give us bones so that tools can be made of them. You read in the earlier part that people in the prehistoric time used to make tools out of bones also. They used to make tools out of stone, wood, and bones. So bones of animals were used to make tools. And another importance of animals were that sinews were used as a thread. Now you will wonder, what is this sinews? This sinew is basically a fiber attached to our muscle. Okay, our body has muscles. Sinews is a fiber which is attached to these muscles. So whenever you rear animals, you hunt animal, you can use this fiber to make thread. Okay, so these were the other purposes of keeping and rearing animals. Today we use animals for transportation also, for pulling the carts, for plowing the fields, etc. So these are the uses of animals apart from as a store of food. Moving on to the next topic of the chapter is, how did we find out about the first farmer and the herder? We have some evidence of early farmers and herders. Archaeologists and historians have provided us evidence. I told you in the first chapter that we always need some evidence. We always need some source to study the past. So archaeologists and historians have provided us the evidence of early farmers and herders. Important evidences are there in the northwest region, that is the present day Kashmir, and in the east and south India also. To find out whether sites were settlements of farmers and herders, scientists study the evidence of plant and animal bones, just to know that whether the sites which we have find out today were there settlements also. जिन साइट्स के बारे में हमें पता चलता है, जिन सिटीज के बारे में पता चलता है, द सिटीज इन द प्री हिस्टोरिक टाइम, क्या वो सिर्फ सिटीज थी या वो पूरा का पूरा सेटलमेंट थी? ये जानने के लिए साइंटिस्ट क्या करते हैं, दे स्टडी द प्लांट्स एंड एनिमल बोन. So if animal bone dates back to some 2.5 million years ago, they will get to know that such city was a proper settlement. Correct? Now you will wonder, how will we get to know about the period from bones? So let me tell you, in science, with the help of bones, we can know that to what time does it belong to. अगर आपको excavation करते समय कोई एक bone मिल जाए, उस बोन से पता करा जा सकता है कि वो बोन कितनी पुरानी है. ओके, लेट्स जस्ट नॉट गेट इनटू दैट. Exciting findings were there. Remains of burnt grain were also found. This is the evidence archaeologists have provided us. This is an evidence. This is a burnt grain. ये ऐसा grain है जो जला हुआ था, और इससे पता चलता है that people used to practice agriculture. They used to ripe grain. They used agriculture as a practice, and they ate such grain. Okay, so this is the evidence that people back in the days, 2.5 million years ago, they were farmers also. The other evidence that archaeologists and historians have provided us are the tools. Archaeologists tells us that in the new way of life, in the new life also, in the Neolithic period also, people still used to make Paleolithic kind of tools. Paleolithic means the stone tools. Paleolithic means the stone tools. So in the Neolithic period also, people used to make tools of Paleolithic type. Some tools were also made of bones. Many kind of earthen pots have also been found. These are the earthen pots which were found out under excavation by the archaeologists. These were sometimes decorated and were used for storing things also. I told you that people started practicing agriculture, and after practicing agriculture, you have to think about storing the food also. So people started making pots and all such beautiful decorated items also, so that they can store their food in it. Besides, they began weaving cloth also, using different kind of material. For example, we have evidence of cotton cloth. So we know that people used to weave cloth also. People used to wear some cotton material, because we have found evidence of cotton, which can now be grown, because now they knew about agriculture. So cotton can also be grown. That is why we know that if cotton can be grown, then they can also wear clothes made of cotton. Moving on to a settled life. Now we know that in the Neolithic period, people had new ideas of agriculture, cultivation, trade, facility, vehicles. That is why they started settling their life. They were moving towards a more settled life. Archaeologists have found traces of huts and houses at some sites. कुछ ऐसी sites हमें मिली थी excavation करते समय जहां पर huts के और houses के traces मिले हम लोगों को. People built pit houses dug into the ground. This is a pit house. This is an example of pit house. See, this is a pit. You dug this out and you lay a roof on it and now you can sleep inside it. Correct? So people used to build such pit houses so that they can sleep, they can settle down. Archaeologists have also found cooking earths both inside and outside the huts. This is an earth. Can you see this? People used to cook food in this earth. Sometimes it was found inside the pit, sometimes it was found outside the pit house also. Mortars and pestles are used for grinding grain even today. Now you know this. Have you seen this in your house? If not, please go to your kitchen and find this out if you have this. Okay. This is known as maam dasta in Hindi. But in English it is known as mortar. So mortar and pestles are still used, and mortars and pestle were found under excavation also. This is a piece of excavation. Archaeologists found this out. So they know, archaeologists told us, it tells us that pestle was found under excavation, which shows that people in the prehistoric time also used this kind of tool to grind their food, to grind some kind of spices or any kind of food item. Stone Age to the present day, to prepare ingredients or substances by crushing and grinding them into a fine paste or powder in the kitchen, laboratory and pharmacy. हम आज भी इसको यूज करते हैं. इसमें कोई भी चीज डाल के हम क्रश कर सकते हैं, हम ग्राइंड कर सकते हैं, उसको पेस्ट या पाउडर बना सकते हैं. ऐसा ही एक टूल हमें मिला था प्री हिस्टोरिक टाइम का एक्सकेवेशन के दौरान, और जिससे हमें ये पता चलता है that people used to use this pestle even in the prehistoric time. Moving on. Did things change everywhere and all at once? For example, if you have 10 sites in the prehistoric time, क्या ये सारी साइट्स एक साथ बदल गई होंगी? क्या सब लोगों ने घर बनाना शुरू कर दिए होंगे? क्या सब लोगों ने अर्थ लगा लिए होंगे कुकिंग करने के लिए? Did all the people started practicing agriculture? No, of course not. The changes happened gradually. Changes happened gradually, slowly, not all at once. Not quite. In many areas, men and women still continued to hunt and gather food. Still, there were places where people were still gathering food, where people did not know how to make tools. There were some places where people started practicing agriculture, but there were still some places where people were still hunting. Okay, so now you can say that there are some places where Neolithic period came, but there are some places where still Paleolithic conditions were running. Okay, changes never happen all at once. It takes time from one place to another to switch. So in many areas, men and women still continue to hunt and gather food, and elsewhere people adopted farming and herding slowly over several thousand years. Besides, in some cases, people tried to combine these activities, doing different things during different season. कुछ जगहों पे भी तो ऐसा भी होता था कि लोग एग्रीकल्चर भी करते थे, साथ में हंटिंग भी करते थे, टूल्स भी बना लेते थे, साथ में फूड को गैदर भी करते रहते थे. तो जरूरी नहीं है कि सारी चीजें एक साथ होंगी और एक ही जगह पे होंगी, ऐसा नहीं होता. Sometimes some places practice different kind of activity and the other place practice different kind of activities. For example, in Uttar Pradesh you can see we have metro also, and we still have bullock carts also. Okay. So it's not important that people will completely switch to modern ideas. There are still some people who prefer bullock carts, who prefer public conveyance. Okay. So changes doesn't happen all at once. Now moving on. This is a closer look to a Neolithic site. I told you what was Neolithic. Neolithic is the period where when new ideas emerged, correct? When people started thinking about agriculture, when people started thinking about cultivation, trade, business, and they started settling to a new life. They started building pit houses and a settled form of life. Mehergarh is one such example. Mehergarh is a Neolithic site, as you can see in this map. Mehergarh is a Neolithic site. It is a site of new ideas. Today it is in the present Pakistan region, but in the older time it was here, somewhere near the Indus River only. Okay, as you can see in this map. Mehergarh was probably one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat. You must be wondering, why are we studying about Mehergarh? We are studying about Mehergarh because it was one of the places where people where people learned to grow barley and wheat. And barley and wheat is a very important component and a very important grain in our food, correct? So that is why this site is important, because this is one of the places, not the only place, but one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat, and they reared sheep and goat for the first time in this area. At this site, many animal bones were also found. हमें मेहरगढ़ में बहुत सारी animal bones भी मिलती हैं. Bones of wild animal such as the deer and pig, and also bone of sheep and goat were found in Mehergarh. This include remains of square or rectangular houses also. मेहरगढ़ में barley and wheat उगता था. Sheep and goat rear किए जाते थे. Animal bones were found. Bones of deer, pig, sheep and goat were found. And in Mehergarh, these square rectangular houses were also found, okay? During excavation, such houses were found. Some remains, not complete building, but some remains of such houses were also found. Each house had 4 or more compartments, some of which may have used for storage. हर घर में 4 या 4 से ज्यादा कंपार्टमेंट होते थे. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, दिस इज अ हाउस इन मेहरगढ़, दिस इज अ हाउस इन मेहरगढ़, दिस इज व्हाट अ हाउस इन मेहरगढ़ मे हैव लुक्ड लाइक. एक्सकेवेशन में हमें एक ऐसा टूटी हुई बिल्डिंग मिली, ऐसा एक टूटा हुआ घर मिला हमें. सो व्हेन द आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट फाउंड दिस अंडर एक्सकेवेशन, दे डिड नॉट फाउंड दिस बिल्डिंग कंसोलिडेटेड. ये बिल्डिंग टूटी हुई थी. देयर वर रिमेन्स ऑफ दिस बिल्डिंग. And when they found the remains of this building, they found 4 or more such compartments in each house. So we can say that they used to live in some rooms and they used the other rooms for storage purposes also. Correct? एक ही कमरे में तो नहीं, एक ही कमरे में मतलब सारे कमरे में रहते तो नहीं होंगे. कुछ कमरे में रहते होंगे, कुछ कमरे में सामान स्टोर करते होंगे, जैसे आज हम लोग रहते हैं. Another very important finding which archaeologists have found under excavation in the Mehergarh is a burial. They found this burial. They were excavating the land and they found this skeleton. So we know that Mehergarh also had burial lands over there in their city. The importance of finding the burial is basically knowing that there is some form of life after death. Because of the burial, we know that people in Mehergarh region believed in life after death. Burial is one such arrangement. Burial is an arrangement where you dig the dead body with some important products of life and then you bury the body in it. Several burial sites have been found at Mehergarh, because of which we know that people in Mehergarh used to believe in the form of life after death as well. A very interesting story about Mehergarh is, in one instance, the dead person was buried with goats, which were probably meant to serve as food in the next world. You see in this slide, in this burial, there is dead body, there is this body, and there is skeleton of goats also. So we know that people who buried this person, they also buried some goats also as a form of food item in the next life, as a product to be used by the dead person in the next world. So basically they believed that मरने के बाद भी एक लाइफ होती है, इसलिए इसके पास गोट रख दो ताकि ये कुछ खा सके नेक्स्ट वर्ल्ड में. Okay, this was the belief of the Mehergarh people. Coming on, Now we'll read about the cave painting in France. We always read something about elsewhere in the world whenever we read about the prehistoric time. So in the prehistoric time, we read about India and the nearby region of the subcontinent, correct? Mehergarh is not in India presently, but it is in modern Pakistan, but it is in the same subcontinent region, correct? Now we'll read about something of France as well. The cave painting in France. This painting was found by the archaeologist in a cave in France. The painting year is from a cave in France. This site was discovered by four school children more than 100 years ago. 100 साल पहले स्कूल के बच्चों ने, चार स्कूल के बच्चों ने इस केव पेंटिंग को ढूंढा था. Many of these were of animals such as wild horses, aurochs. Aurochs एक form of cattle होती थी, एक wild cattle होती थी. Bison की पेंटिंग भी मिली थी उस केव में. Woolly rhinoceros की पेंटिंग मिली थी. Paintings were also there of reindeer, bear, painted in bright colors. These colors were made from minerals like ochre, ochre भी बोलते हैं इसको, ochre और iron ore and charcoal. You must be wondering अब उस टाइम पे कैमलिन के पेंट कलर्स तो नहीं आते थे, पेस्टल कलर्स, करेक्ट? तो केव में पेंटिंग होते कैसे होगी? पीपल यूज टू मेक कलर्स आउट ऑफ ochre, out of iron ore, out of charcoal. Charcoal has black color and ochre gives us yellow metallic color. So the people in the prehistoric time used such color. They used to make such color and they used to paint the walls of the caves. We read about a rock painting in part 1 also, correct? We read about the cave painting in the Bhimbetka, Madhya Pradesh also. And this is one of the other examples of cave painting, rock painting in France. So with this, we come to the end of our chapter, and these are some important keywords you should know the meaning of, and try to find out the meaning of any other important words which you don't know yet. I told you about hunter-gatherers. I told you what is the meaning of site. I told you what was Paleolithic. Paleolithic is the old Stone Age. Then I told you about Mesolithic. Mesolithic is the middle Stone Age, correct? When changes were happening before 10,000 years ago, 10 to 12,000 years ago, when changes were gradually happening, when people were shifting from the old ideas to a slightly new idea. And then we read about the microlith. We read about domestication. What is domestication? Then how people started becoming farmers, because in the Neolithic age, they knew about the practice of agriculture. They started growing plants. They settled in one place to grow such plants, and that is how they became farmers. Slowly and gradually, they became herders also, because they started rearing the animals for food, for trade and business. So they started becoming herders also. And then we read about the Neolithic sites and Neolithic age, which is the new age, the age of new creations and ideas, when people shifted from the old stone and bone tools to a new sharpened stone tools, correct? More sharp stone tools through which they can kill animals also. And then we read about the burials in Mehergarh region. After doing this, I think now we can recall the chapter. Let's complete the sentences. First is, hunter-gatherers chose to live in caves and rock shelters because the caves and the rock shelters provided them protection from rain, heat and wind. I told you this, that caves protect us. In the Bhimbetka, I told you that such caves protected people from rain, heat and wind. Next is, grasslands developed around dash years ago. When did grasslands develop? I told you that when people started settling, over the years, climate changed. And because of climate change, temperature grew. Temperature started increasing. And because of increasing temperature, grasslands started developing. When did it develop? It developed 12,000 years ago during the Mesolithic Stone Age time period. Okay. Now we'll discuss some question answers also. Why do people who grow crops have to stay in the same place for a long time? Question ये कहना चाहता है कि जो लोग, people who grow crops, जो लोग क्रॉप ग्रो करते हैं उन्हें सेम प्लेस पे लॉन्ग टाइम तक क्यों रहना पड़ता है? The answer to this is very easily because the people who grow crops, they have to stay in the same place for a long time because they have to take care of the plants. They have to look after the plants. They have to look after the watering. They have to see whether weeds are coming or not. They have to drive away the animals and birds also so that animals and birds do not destroy the crops. And finally, they have to store the grains after harvesting them. Okay. Next question. Why do archaeologists think that many people who lived in Mehergarh were hunters to start with and that herding became more important later? आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट को ऐसा क्यों लगता है कि मेहरगढ़ में रहने वाले जो लोग थे वो पहले हंटर्स थे बट धीरे धीरे वो हर्डिंग करना शुरू हो गए? So the answer to this is archaeologists found the bones of many wild animals. I told you in the slide also that archaeologists found bones of wild animals such as deer and pig at the earlier levels. Earlier level में तो उन्हें मेहरगढ़ में bones मिली थी. This was used as an evidence that many people who lived in मेहरगढ़ were hunters. आपको अगर animal के bones मिल रहे हैं मतलब लोग उन्हें hunt करते होंगे या animals वहां थे और अगर animals थे तो उनकी hunting जरूर होती होगी because people in the prehistoric time used to eat animals. Animals were a source of food for the people in the prehistoric time. So Mehergarh gives us the evidence that there were hunters to start with. But later on, herding also became important for them as bones of sheep and goats were also found. पहले तो हमें deer और pig की bones मिलती थी जिन्हें हम खा सकते हैं बट बाद में हमें sheep और goat की bones भी मिली जिनसे हमें wool, milk भी मिल सकता है and through which we know that people slowly became herders also. They started rearing animals also. Okay. So this was the answer. Next question. Why did the hunter-gatherers travel from place to place? In what ways are these similar to or maybe different from the reason for which we travel today? Question ये कहना चाह रहा है that hunter-gatherers place to place wander क्यों करते थे? Correct? और उनके wander करने का जो reason था वो हमसे कितना similar था और हमसे कितना different था? हम आज भी travel करते हैं. We travel today as well. We also travel from place to place, cities to cities, countries to countries. But in what manner the reasons to move from place to place were similar and different from today's world? Answer to this is very easy. Hunter-gatherers traveled from one place to another because of the following reasons. उन्हें एक ही जगह पे अगर वो रहते तो वहां पर जितना भी खाना था वो फिनिश हो जाता and that is why they used to shift from one place to another so that they can gather more food. Another reason to move from one place to place was they were hunters. People in the prehistoric time were hunters and they needed animals to hunt. और animals अपने फूड की सर्च के लिए जहां जहां जाता था हंटर उसे फॉलो करता रहता था. हंटर यूज्ड टू फॉलो द एनिमल्स. दैट इज व्हाई पीपल मूव फ्रॉम प्लेस टू प्लेस. बट टुडे वी डू नॉट ट्रैवल इन सर्च ऑफ फूड. अब हम खाना ढूंढने के लिए ट्रैवल नहीं करते या पानी ढूंढने के लिए ट्रैवल नहीं करते. करेक्ट? नाउ बिकॉज वी आर केपेबल ऑफ अर्निंग ओवर आवर नेसेसिटीज. अब हमारे पास अपनी एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड है, अपनी मार्केट है, अपने सप्लायर्स हैं, सब कुछ है हमारे पास. अब वी हैव ऑल द फैसिलिटीज एंड वी हैव ऑल द एबिलिटी टू गेन फूड एंड वाटर. बट वी ट्रैवल because we have to go to our school, we have to go to our workplace, we have to trade, we have to go for business purposes. We sometimes travel for amusement and entertainment purposes also. So this is the difference between modern people and people in the prehistoric time. People in the prehistoric time used to wander from place to place in search of food and water. But today we travel to go to our school, workplace, trade, business purpose and for our entertainment purposes. Okay, so these are the basic differences. Next question is list 3 ways in which hunter-gatherers used fire. Would you use fire for any of these purposes today? The 3 ways in which hunter gatherers used fire were, किस चीज के लिए फायर यूज करते थे वो लोग? To cook their food, to scare the wild animals and to warm themselves up during winters. क्या आज भी हम लोग फायर का यूज इन पर्पसेस के लिए करते हैं? नो, वी ओनली यूज फायर टू कुक फूड. अब हमारे घर के बाहर वाइल्ड एनिमल तो नहीं आते हैं, so we don't have to scare them from fire. We do not need fire to warm ourselves because we have houses, we have proper pakka houses, so that is why we don't use fire to warm ourselves. But there are still some people in the village area and some backward area जहां पर अभी भी AC नहीं होते, जहां पे heaters नहीं होते. Those people still use wood and fire to warm themselves up. Okay, so in the today word we use for cooking purposes and warming ourselves. Okay, next question is list 3 ways in which the lives of farmers and herders would have been different that of hunter and gatherers. हमें 3 ऐसे तरीके बताने हैं जिससे ये पता चले that lives of farmers and herders were different from the lives of hunter and gatherers. Lives of farmers and herders would have been different from that of hunter and gatherers in the following 3 ways. First way is farmers and herders would stay in one place, whereas hunter and gatherers would have to move from place to place in search of their food. हम लोगों ने ये पढ़ा था that farmers and herders have to look after their plants, herders have to look after their animals, that is why they have to stay in one place. Whereas hunter and gatherers, they have to move from place to place in search of food. Correct? So this was the difference in their life. Second difference. Farmers and herders would stay in huts and thatched houses. Whereas hunter and gatherers would stay in caves. Farmers and herders मैंने बताया था वो लोग pit houses में, thatched houses में. जैसे हम लोगों ने वो pit house देखा था. A pit was dug and a thatch was there as a roof. So they used to live in thatched houses, but hunter and gatherers used to live in caves. Third reason which make the life of farmer different from the life of hunter is farmer and herder used crops and domesticated animals for like sheep, goat as their sources of food. But hunters dependent on wild animals for their food. Okay? So these were the differences in the life of farmer, herder and hunter and gatherer. So with this we come to the end of our chapter 2.